Smart 24, driving business.
We'll be back from the break. It's exactly 9 a.m. You're still watching Smart Men's Business. This morning, I'm Andrew Barije with Masi Katsime as we are here to bring you that right information on your daily Kickstarter. That is a Smart Men's Business. But of course, before we get into any further related discussions, don't forget the markets on the Zabo platform, which I've already opened as I speak right now. Start to 92 hash is the USSD code for you there, as you'll be available with a number of options. You will be able to buy government bonds and securities for just as little as 15,000 you get on shillings. Now the markets opened at 8:15 a.m. and they'll be closing at 3:15 p.m. East African time. Effective Monday up to Friday, except on the weekends and the public holidays. But this week there are no public holidays. But so that means you have an access to the markets Monday up to Friday. So if you're watching this today, you have a chance. It's just a new week. It's a Monday. Go further and invest and make sure that you'll be able to, earn a living for yourself. And life will never be the same again. Something which I believe is very key and very relevant for your personal growth and development. Now, Zabo made this a reality. There is no excuse for not owning these bonds and securities in such a time, the 21st century, as we're seeing developments all over in technology. Now, Zabo simply says, my money, my future. And Altex East Africa tells you, do something new for yourself in the year 2023. Well, it's the 19th of June. It's a Monday, just a few days. The budget was read on the 15th, just 4 days after the reading of the budget. And now we're starting the financial year in July, yes. But of course, there are aspects that need to be really taken into consideration because before you take into the outlook of the year 2023, it's also very important to have a review of how 2022 was, and we do quite lots of comparisons as we see the way forward, because when you know that, you'll be in position to project development and you will know the required way to position yourself. Masi, there are aspects here which people need to understand, which I believe, it's one thing for us to have anticipations, probably that the budget 2023, 2024 is going to have initiatives about household incomes increasing, which is okay, which is a very good to read when you read it on paper or anywhere. But the ultimate question to ask yourself is, how do I position myself for me to benefit from that? And that's where a majority of the people miss out. And we say the government initiatives probably didn't work, but they didn't work, it's okay. It would be right to say that if you had availed yourself and positioned yourself. But if you have never positioned yourself, well, you have no right to speak. Now, of course, taking a look at the recent economic performance as projected, we see projected growth. Yes, 5.5% compared to 4.6% last year. Actually, even the finance minister said that in the coming 5 years, the economy is projected to grow at 6.5 to 7. That's in the coming
5 years from now.
In the coming 5 years. Now we see the projected growth here is 5.5%. That is compared to 4.6% last year. Well, I think it signifies some sort of an increase.
Next year, 2024, 2025, definitely the increase will already be at 6%.
At 6%.
We may actually not reach the 5 years. We may grow. We may continue growing steadily, and finally we may reach at maybe like 9, 8. In the next 5 years, if we take things seriously.
Very serious.
Yeah, but the question has been,
yes,
people are asking, was what was budgeted for last year, 2022, 2023, was it worked upon? We are into, yes, we're going into the next year, but last year.
Was it worked upon?
What went wrong? I mean, we saw projects that, there were complaints about projects that have hazard. You know, that's also an issue that we have to look into before we get into the physical 2023, 2024. Yes. I mean, we have to look for way forwards.
Okay, way forwards out, how to implement that.
Yes, how to implement. Implementation has always been a problem when it comes to Ghanaans. Yes, we have the funds, but implementation.
And that explains why the government is one of the key economic priorities for the financial 2023-2024 is to invest in projects that have quite high multiplier effects, of course, which comes in back to the National Development Plan 3. Now, the services sector grew at 6.26%. That is compared to 4.1% in the previous year. Actually, the service sector employs quite lots of people, and it's one of the key sectors because remember, there is a need to reduce on domestic borrowing because it's straining the private sector, and the service sector is one of those aspects which are very potential, fertile grounds to get taxes from. But of course we see that the service sector grew at 6.2% compared to 4.1%. So that's
a growth of 2 point something.
Yeah, a growth of about 1.8 actually. No, 1.8, something like that. Yes. Yeah, okay. Now here we see the agriculture sector, of course, which grew by 5%. And of course, we anticipate that it's going to grow further. That is if the message of value addition, or what I call the gospel of value addition, is taken seriously and put into implementation, as the different stakeholders have been actually calling it out. That is the president and even inclusive of the members of parliament, as we saw in our update number 2 of our commercialization. Now, of course, industry grew at 3.9%. Of course, definitely there is need for more industrial parks. Of course, we already have industrial parks, but there is that aspect of maintenance.
I believe each district should have at least an industrial park.
Yeah, actually,
so that it's for easier. There was an instance. So I'll keep referring to Kawale because there was an instance of they wanted to set up an industrial park, but they could not get enough space. And they could not encroach on the wetlands. Why? Because we are advocating for a greener environment. You cannot encroach on the wetlands.
True.
So you see, developments have become developments. If you find in a district you cannot get 50 acres to set up a park, then there is a problem.
A big problem.
That means you have to shift people that were there, and of course compensate them, and then inconveniences, and then. So I believe we should always spare space. We should always spare space for such. And I believe the issue is we've had this thing for culture, inheritance. This land, my father gave it to me, my grandfather. So it's very hard for us Ugandans to depart from such properties that belong to us. And of course, with land, the value of land is high lately. So maybe unless you're going to sell it to government at a higher cost, but imagine in a district you cannot get land to set up an industrial park. That is problematic. You can't even get 5 acres. That's problematic.
It's very big problem.
I believe each district should have an industrial park just to easen up things. Yes.
Okay.
Or maybe if it's not that, maybe every region.
Every region. Yeah, that's how actually supposed to be.
They shouldn't be in one area.
Yeah, scattered. Scattered in the different areas in there. And of course, we are looking at matters of national development. Of course, further as we proceed, of course, we see there was some aspect in relation to before, if we are to get back to the previous statistics. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Now, commercial bank lending interest rates increased to 19.3%. And that is in April 2023. Yes, as of April 2023, that is from 18.8% in April 2022. Interest lendings. Of course, such of the ways to reducing the money in circulation. But also, I'll also accredit the bank, the central bank. It's been very critical in terms of maintaining its rate at 10%. Yes, and according to the recent meeting up there, yes, something which I think is also okay, and it's really putting, trying to stabilize.
Despite the high standard, the living standards.
The high standards of living, and of course the high cost of doing business. Now, of course, also we see economic recovery funds, of course, worth 2.7 trillion. Economic recovery funds, of course, we're looking at recovery. Like what you mentioned in earlier, the budgets, all the countries in East Africa have raised their budgets as compared to the previous times, because we are in a valley, a valley, and we want to recover. We want to come out of the valley, and that calls for more investment for that to be possible. Now, of course, we still see Uganda's export of merchandise goods amounted to about 4.2 billion compared to 3.1 billion. That is over the same period of over the previous financial year. So you can clearly see how this is really moving on forward. Of course, let's proceed next, and as we see further what is required in there, as of course as we are examining the recent economic performance. Yes, now of course we look at Uganda. Imported goods worth as 7.1 billion US dollars compared to 5.8 billion. That is in the same period in the previous financial year. We imported goods worth 7.1 billion.
Wow.
I mean, that is low. That is all foreign revenue moving out there. But of course, we've tried to minimize it because they say we imported goods worth that amount compared to 5.8 in the same period. So that means we have reduced on the importation. So that means we need to find a way we can maintain the forex reserve. Because once you have little forex money, that means you'll have to get more. Because if you're importing more, that means you're spending lots of that. And once the backup of your forex reserve is known to stable with time, actually that also determines the value of your local currency. And that's why we've seen, though this year it's been a little bit, it tried to kind of stabilize, but it's still been overshadowed by the dollar, the rate, and all that. Now we see the trade with our East African community trading partners, that is of 1 billion US dollars. Actually, we seem to have traded more with our East African partners as compared to the rest of Africa. That is in the previous year, something which I believe is okay.
It's okay, quite okay.
Yeah, because as we strengthen this bond, do you know that even us too, for countries which are going to benefit mainly in the intra-African trade, I believe there is going to be this aspect of how rooted are you in your regional groupings, because we have the COMESA, we have the SADC, we have the IGAD, we have the ECOWAS, the East African community itself, for you to get into the bigger market. Because once you have an established community where you're coming from, for example, you belong to IGAD, you belong to COMESA, you belong to everywhere, there is a way you have a strong bargaining power on the African continent, even when it comes to negotiating your prices out there. Something which I believe is key, and like Uganda, actually, we've been really benefiting so much from the East African community. That I'll propose. Though we've still had a challenge, is that most of the countries, when you look at most of these regional groupings, there is some sort of imbalance when it comes to benefits. There are countries which seem to be benefiting more than others, and others are still looking in for it. But I feel like if we are to have that sustainable growth as a country, Uganda, of course, basing on the East African community, is very vital to have that harmony. At the end of the day, it will be key for us as a country to earn some money, which will be very vital for economic growth and recovery. Of course, now further here we see a foreign direct investment inflows to Uganda amounted to 1.5 billion US dollars. Yes, foreign direct investment inflows And actually, a great thanks to the private sector of Uganda. It has really done a great job to make sure that attracting the foreign direct investment. And of course, we see the tourism revenue increased. That is to 847.8 million US dollars by April 2023. That is from 777 million. Yeah, so you can get to realize that the tourism actually it's one of our powerhouses.
Yes,
financial powerhouses.
And the fact that
we're embracing, and of course we've seen moves which have been undertaken by the tourism ministry and the tourism boards, making sure that they support that is domestic tourism. We've seen visit now they're in northern Uganda. We saw visit the west. They're very, very key, despite the fact that still there is a problem that domestic tourism doesn't really pay a lot of money as compared to Western. But you see, with the priorities of the budget 2023-2024, with the aspects of human capital development, because with human capital development, you attract value, which value attracts money. And once people have the money, I believe they will be able to really pay for these expensive trips and go out there. Something which I think let us see how this really goes, because one program influences development of another. That's one thing we need to put into perspective. The success of one program can spread through various sectors. Something which we believe can be very key and vital when it comes to development. Of course, as we proceed further, let's proceed as we take a look at the statistics, the anticipations of economic performance. Before we are going to look at the total revenue collections. Let's get back on our graphics as we take a look at that on the revenue collections. Yes, now the total domestic revenue collections was 21.7 trillion Ugandan shillings by May 2023, and 25.6 trillion by close of the financial year. That is a total domestic revenue collections. Of course, I think that is a little bit close to the target as we anticipate. All right, let's proceed as we take a look here at how the economy has been progressing.
I must say, actually, I must commend our citizens as Ugandans. We are seeing growth. There are very many, like the mentioned about right there. We have registered quite a number of growths.
Yeah,
which is
growth.
Yeah, which is quite interesting. If you see a country, despite with inflation reducing to 6%, this is quite interesting for us as Ugandans, and of course we are growing despite we are in the post-COVID recovery, and we are growing still. That just imagine we are out of the recovery. The amount of growth that we will have exhibited.
Very
interesting for us.
But it is a key to speak all that because it's much more better if it's experienced as collective individuals, because the 6% growth is okay, but if we still have people that survive on nothing, 1 meal a day down there, it puts me back to question that, these are on-ground statistics which really, I don't know which people really can get to see.
This is the what? They popularized the budget. That means it is Muntu is also benefiting this time.
Let us see and wait. Let's wait and see. Now, taking a look here at economic growth strategy and outlook, of course, support for the private sector by reducing the cost of doing business. I think this would be the best, because this is the greatest challenge which most people have been facing, most private entrepreneurs, about running businesses. Taxes are high, and that's why majority, and actually it explains why the Buy Uganda Build Uganda initiative up to now has faced a challenge. That is of that rising taxes. Definitely, that means the producers of these goods are going to be forced to increase the taxes on the buyer. The price. And before
have you tried purchasing one of the Buy Uganda Build? What you expect? Actually, wanted to purchase an item, it was quite
the quality is okay.
but it was
The quality is okay, but it's the expensive.
They're
that is
really
true.
expensive, and people don't. You know, I when you go to supermarkets, there is always, if you maybe go to Oasis Mall,
Yeah.
Carrefour, there is always that section of buy boo boo, buy Ghana, baby Ghana. There is accessories, but people take a blind eye. They go past them because why? They know. I mean, you'd rather buy an earring of 2,000 than this one of 10.
Absolutely.
And so I really, I find it really quite disturbing, really. But they're good. They're really good.
They're good. The quality is okay. Actually,
the qualities are good because they're African. They have fabrics, wood, chitenje, But people are not really buying it.
Okay. Now, I think that is one of the key aspects of the economic outlook, the strategy, economic strategy, support for the private sector by reducing the cost of doing business through. Of course, construction of the standard gauge railway and the rehabilitation of the meter gauge railway. Of course, when we have, costs, because when we have transport alternatives, you reduce on the cost other than you being limited to one alternative, which is road transport. Of course, that is also
people have been affected really.
Exactly.
Recently, Shireka market people.
By that, exactly.
Their businesses being affected right there. But we hope they are according some funds for the construction of it. So we hope the families will be rehabilitated, and of course, 2,000 to Kampala. So definitely people have been affected. They are back in taxis and incurring costs, but not to worry. You won't be back on your train.
Exactly. Now, number two, as part of ways to support, I would request we get back in there. Exactly. Now, of course, irrigation scheme address climate change and ensure food security, and of course, we see maintenance of very key and vital to take control. And now, of course, continued investments in industrial parks and energy transmission lines. Of course, that is the implementation of Greater Kampala metropolitan infrastructure, and of course, the development master plan. Yes, transportation is very key for any mobility because, of course, it aids movement of goods from one area to another. And also in economics, we have what we call velocity of money, the rate at which money is able to move from one hand to the other. The faster it does, the faster the economic activity. The slower it does, the slower the economic activity. So you can get to realize how all that works in here, of course, with transportation. But number two was also very key, development of small-scale powered irrigation schemes to address climate change and ensure food security. Talking about commercialization of agriculture, value addition, we need to really have constant irrigation schemes, and having solar-powered irrigation schemes could be one key aspect because we need that consistency of flow of water, which is very key. And food security is key because if you say that you're targeting a certain growth rate, you say that, I'm projecting my economy to grow by 6%, one of the key aspects you need to put into great consideration is food security. People need to eat food. I mean, people can't walk hungry. That is very evident. Look at the countries which are having really crisis to food. You tell me, you rate the economic activity, the economy, how it's growing. You'll know. Look at Sudan.
It's
South
quite
Sudan.
Fascinating how you see countries like Egypt, desert
countries, exactly.
Are really in agriculture. They are by far
very true.
So far, and you wonder how they do it. I think maybe partly is because they plan because it's a desert.
Course, by the way, it's all about planning.
Prior.
It's all about planning. Remember, actually, if you take a look, 10 years from now, the populations in the different countries are not going to be the same. So, as a person into the planning authority in that different country, what are you planning out there? Do we plan for next year? Do we plan for... So, it all comes back with planning, how you plan, irrigation. Because regardless of how you put out your prospects for financial 2023, 2024, because you cannot tell me that you're planning for, you've put a perspective of 2023, 2024, and you're planning it that very year. That is something you must have started planning 5 years ago.
Yes,
but of course, that's why if you have a 10 budget plan, a 10-year plan for something, for let me say agriculture or irrigation, that by this year we need to have this. It must be included in the different budgets that you present over those period of times. But of course, you don't bring it out like as though you're going to accomplish it that year. You can start it phase by phase by phase, till you finally accomplish it.
Can I give an example? Actually, I must say, I think this goes back to the story of Moses and how he helped the Egyptians.
The Egyptians.
They had the plan.
The Israelites.
When was it the vision? The vision was
for the vision
for the Pharaoh.
The vision that the Pharaoh had
to preach the
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they planned prayer for those 7 years.
Actually, it was Joseph.
Joseph
when he was which he had about 7 cows and all that.
Yes.
Actually that's where we saw economic financial planning in the history of mankind.
Yes.
That was quite a very clear aspect in the Bible. See that we see when after having that vision they had to plan.
They started planning
prior to that time. Something very key and very important. Well, that is it for this particular moment. Of course, we've been looking at our insight with a summary of the budget financial year 2023-2024. Now 3 minutes to 9:30. Don't forget the markets on the Zabo platform, which have already opened. Start 292 hash is simply the USSD code for you there, as you'll be availed with a number of options. You'll be to buy government bonds and securities for as little as 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Yes, the markets open at 8:15 a.m. and they'll be closing at 3:15 p.m. East African time. This is going to be effective Monday up to Friday, except from the weekends and the public holidays when the markets are inaccessible. But of course, despite the fact you have the rest of the days to capitalize and make yourself quite some huge profits. And now this week there is no public holiday, so that means it's going to be available for you to make yourself quite some huge money. For you Monday up to Friday. Zabo reality. There is no excuse. That's why you shouldn't own government bonds and securities in such a time, in such a 21st century. Now Zabo simply says my money, my future, and also to tells you do something new for yourself in this year 2023. And now let's get into the break. We shall be returning with our on-ground discussions to wrap this up.
Smart 20